Okay, so let's just see. First of all, let's get a very quick sense from each one of the developers as to what, just so that we know, what is their current capacity, what are their plans, as in, I have 2 gigawatt, I'm going to do 6 more in the next 5 years, so just that. So, and we'll start from this end. So, Mr. Rathour, do you want to tell us about NHPC? What is the capacity and what are the plans for solar? For solar, it should work.
Thank you very much for inviting NHPC. NHPC means turning the challenges into opportunities. Actually, our core business is hydro power projects generation. We are now operating around 24 projects across the country. And that is very challenging and very tough terrain. We have commissioned the hydro projects. And our total installed capacity is around 7,100 in hydro. We are also working and diversified our business in the new emerging business of the renewable sector, including solar power. First project we have commissioned in 2018 in Tamil Nadu, 50 megawatt. Since then, we are trying to add our capacity in this business more. And around we have now at present 450 megawatt that we have commissioned in the renewable sector and solar business, including the 50 megawatt wind power in the Jaisalmer. And around 400 gigawatt that is under pipeline in various stages under construction and tendering. And recently, we have last year got the award letter from IREDA under CPSU scheme, 1,000 megawatt. So our that projects are also located in the Rajasthan and Gujarat and Andhra. So work is going on in full swing at the Bikaner 300 megawatt awarded to Tata Power. In addition to that, recently Ministry of Renewable Energy, MNRE, they have assigned to us 10 gigawatt as a renewable energy implementing agency for floating the tender. So they have given the target and guidelines trajectory for this 23-24. So we are working on that also for tendering and as an intermediary procurer. We have already in 2020, we have awarded 200 gigawatt to various developers as an intermediary procurer. Through that scheme, as a implementing agency, we are now, that power has been tied up with the MP, Punjab, J&K, and Chhattisgarh. So there is the O2 is also one of the developer in that our intermediary procurer projects. So Adani is 600, Eden and ABC. So various developers are associated with us, and we hope to add more capacity in coming years. And we have the target, ambitious target around 10 gigawatt in next 2-3 years.
Thank you.
And we are also working with the other sectors, pump storage and green hydrogen, and contributing other things, the module manufacturing.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask you about storage in particular also later on. Thank you very much. Mr. Varghese, same question for you with the one added component. When you talk about future, you can tell us how the portfolio mix will change for renewable, for renew power, not renew, as you, I'm assuming, get more of solar and therefore not as much of wind, So, or maybe I'm wrong about that, but you'll tell us.
No, it's a valid point. Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. So we are basically a 12-year-old company, right? And today we have an operating capacity of 8 gigawatt, and it's dominated by wind in the sense that it's 4.5 gigawatt wind and about 3.5 gigawatt of solar. But we have pipeline of another 6 gigawatt to be executed in the next 2.5 to 3 years, and that, as Mr. Alok mentioned, is majority solar. And but market has been changing. For the last 3 to 5 years, I think solar capacity addition in India has been much higher than wind capacity addition. But now what the change that is happening is people are moving more towards hybrid projects. So we are seeing wind coming back. And most of these hybrid projects which are being set up with high CUF like 60, 70, 80%, are actually have at least 2 to 3 times wind as much as the solar capacity that's being set up. Right, so we see wind coming back and a lot of demand for wind projects today in India. But so of course, solar has its own space, and the next couple of years at least, we see wind solar going hand in hand. And as far as we are concerned, our pipeline, as I said, is primarily wind and solar, but we also have one very small hydro project, which is 100 megawatt. And we are looking to expand some capacity in the hydro space also, more from the point of view of more from the point of view of using the hydro project more as a using the for storage. So we can get maybe about 3 to 4 hours of storage from a hydro project. And from that point of view, we're looking to develop hydro. We are also into battery storage, and we have a transmission division which is bidding for and executing transmission projects independently under the TBCB route. So that's where we are today.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mohit, same question for you, sir.
Sure.
And these mics are not very sensitive, so you have to tilt them apparently. Yes. Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, great. So yes, good morning everybody. And in terms of O2 Power, not a very old company, started early in 2020. And as luck would have it, we started in January and March COVID hit us. But it still was a decent journey for us. We kept winning through the year 2020 and then 2021 because government was quite serious about making sure that tenders kept happening. And for us, as Mr. Alok was pointing out, for NHPC, it was their first tender. And for us, it was our first win. So since then, we've been able to build a capacity of about 2.6 gigawatts. This spans across solar and wind and hybrid projects. Also, this is across central implementation agencies like SECI, NHPC, NTPC, and certain state projects. So at this point in time, again, because of COVID-related delays, we have now started commissioning projects. 600 megawatts is already commissioned across Rajasthan, Karnataka, Telangana. And as we move forward, by end of this year or early next year, we would have added another 1 gigawatt and then 1 gigawatt in the following year. In terms of our focus, I think as Sanjay was pointing out, yes, the market is changing and we want to make sure that we are aligned to the new realities. First one being that, now C&I customers, instead of just replacing their grid power with some solar power, they are talking about going green. They are under pressure, especially people who are exporting, pharma, IT. They are under pressure from their buyers to reduce their carbon footprint. And so they are talking about RTC, firm power, high CUF content, which means you can do it only with a combination of solar and wind. And so we are setting up those kind of projects, including in certain cases storage as well. So we are focused on these segments. Plus, we continue to participate in government tenders, also in the newly emerging areas like green hydrogen, and to some extent, participating in the merchant market. And there, my own sense is that solar may not be such a good source if you want to participate in merchant. But if you look at the price behavior of merchant markets, and if you extrapolate that into future, then wind turns out to be a better source for participating in merchant. So we are focused on that segment as well.
Okay.
So broadly, that's about.
Okay. Just if I can just go back to Mr. Varghese just for a minute. Mr. Varghese, of the 3.5 gigawatt that you mentioned you have right now, solar,
Yeah.
Is that all utility scale, utility customers, or is there any C&I in there?
No, so C&I in our existing operating portfolio would be about 10-15%.
Okay.
But going forward, we are seeing that
That'll be a big part of it.
Percentage growing, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Mohit, what percentage is CNI there right now, part of your portfolio?
So at this point, our CNI would be about 15 to 20% of our portfolio.
And it's mostly central agencies, utility scale through central agencies?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Understood that. Okay. All right. So if I can go to Mr. Narula. Mr. Narula, a question I've not warned you about. What is your perspective, what's your take on the Indian market, how you think it will grow in the next few years? I know I've not warned you about this question before, but I thought, because I'm sure you have consultants doing this for you all the time.
Yeah, it's okay. Thank you so much for this question, and thanks for having me here. Good morning to everyone. In terms of the roadmap for India, I think what we see as a global supplier of solar modules, we only look at the trajectory of solar projects in the country, and we find that India has all the ingredients to grow above 20 or 25 gigawatts every year from now on, since the net zero targets have been set and several new manufacturing units have been approved through PLI and other schemes. And looking at the way there is a lot of thrust on Make in India, so I think there are all the right ingredients to make the success very soon. The way we achieved 20 gigawatt earlier than the targets, which was set up, in the initial stage of National Solar Mission, I'm sure and quite confident that India will also achieve net zero targets quite well ahead of time. And the stakeholders, I think, are all quite excited about it, and so are the global suppliers like Jinko. To take you through a perspective that in terms of technology, so I'm quite confident that India is also now taking chances to invest into all the new upcoming technologies also. Earlier, India was always a follower of technologies, and Indian manufacturers were also not looking at investing or taking risk on new technologies. But now we have seen certain announcements, and there are quite strong signals that we are getting that India is not only competing with other countries of the world, but also creating its own benchmark in terms of quality, in terms of efficiencies. And so the road ahead is quite positive, I would say.
Okay, all right. Let me begin the next round with, I think one or two of you mentioned COVID-related delays in projects. I'm going to begin with Mr. Varghese this time. I'm going to keep rotating. So Mr. Varghese, how does the supply chain picture look today? Are we back to pre-COVID, or do we still have some COVID hangover from a supply chain point of view?
I think the biggest hangover we have from the COVID period is the commodity price cycle, right? And so the price hike that we have seen post, so activities are back to normal in terms of people, sites operating at full capacity. Even during COVID, sites were operating. But there's no hurdles right now from that point of view. But the biggest issue right now is the commodity price hike that we saw post, say, early 21, right? From there, it's moderated a little bit, but prices are still much higher than what was in the pre-COVID area. Okay. So that's the biggest impact.
But in terms of logistics and in terms of timelines for executing orders, are the providers now giving you what you want?
Not really. So supplies are constrained because demand has really grown post-COVID, and so even getting delivery commitments is a problem. So
could you make it vivid for us, saying it used to take 3 months, now it's going to take 9 months or some such whatever?
Yeah, things like power transformers, right? What used to take 6 months earlier now take 12 months. You have to book them well in advance. Inverters are a big problem in solar, primarily because the IGBTs or the electronic components, right? There's a shortage worldwide, and so delivery timelines and availability. That's a big problem. Yeah.
All right. And you think that despite all of this, okay, so and what would, once the domestic manufacturing picks up here, right? What is your expectation on that? Do you think that picking up? Will we get to the 25 to 50 megawatt that we sometimes hear about?
I think we'll get to that capacity if you add up everything that's been announced and what's being set up already. I think from where we were 2 years ago, maybe we had maximum 1 or 2 gigawatt, which was based on latest technology. Most of the other capacity was outdated. Right. But in the last 2 years, we've had at least 10 plus gigawatt getting added. Right. And I think in the next 2 years, we will see another 20 gigawatt, 25 gigawatt.
And what's your view on, the kinds of technologies that we ought to be looking at or are looking at right now?
Technology, I think everybody is right now going for the latest technology. At least they're going with monoperk. And, the world market is already changing. In China, people are already shifting over to TOPCon. They're talking about 400 gigawatt of TOPCon capacity in China by end of the year. And so we're going to play catch up.
Okay.
And so whatever capacity is coming up right now will be monoperk, but we'll have to switch very quickly to TOPCon. Yeah.
All right, okay. Mr. Mohit, I'll go to you next with the same question. What are you seeing on your projects? Supply chain constraints, which are the constraints that are still there? Other than what Mr. Varghese mentioned, which is that, okay, the prices have moderated, but not as much as you would have wanted them to, and to the fact that it is taking longer for people to execute orders.
Yeah. Actually, both. I would say in terms of prices, prices have moderated a bit, especially on the module side, but very volatile, uncertain. You know, prices will come down and again they'll start stiffening. This was not something that was being witnessed pre-COVID times.
Right.
You know, the kind of uncertainty that you have, because when you participate in a tender,
Right.
then you have not been able to lock 100% of your prices.
Right.
And then the volatility that you get to see tends to have an impact on the project returns. So that is something we continue to witness. And then again, especially on the wind side, the supply chains have got elongated.
Right.
The lead times of Class A components coming in from China,
Right.
they have gone up quite a bit.
Okay.
And so
Yeah,
therefore Indian
this
OEMs...
I'm going to ask you mostly about solar only. You know. Yeah.
Okay.
As you said, there's volatility in the prices. No, so in your modeling, net, where does that net out? Has it been? Will that impact your margins very significantly, or just somewhat?
I would say some, sanity is returning to prices.
Right.
What used to be
I mean, if I
not
look at your
project.
investors and the money you're raising, I'm thinking they are not so concerned, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So at still some point, viability was being saved on the other side by financing. The rates were very low.
Right.
But now the rates have started stiffening. And so therefore, the prices need to come down. Early start, prices have started stabilizing a bit. But I would say the return thresholds are just there on the tenterhooks.
Okay.
Hopefully, in the coming days, if we get to see, especially on as I was talking to Manish, the kind of supply chain that you are seeing in China.
Right.
Poly prices have come down. Now it is cell prices that need to come down. And hopefully it will happen soon. I think things will be more rational than they were.
Okay. I'm going to go to Mr. Rathour first before I come to Mr. Narula, right? You'll always be the last one in our round because these are your customers or potential customers, right? So, Mr. Rathour, you earlier mentioned COVID-related delays you were mentioning. So, how is the execution happening now?
Actually, we are facing as a PSU, various challenges. We have to comply the rule and regulations of the ministry. So whatever tender we are plotting, so there is the condition to requirement to fulfill the class 1 category and domestic content. Because of that, we are facing the tough situations because sufficient production, domestic production is not available. That's why most of the tenders we are facing to execute in very difficult way. So this is the main problem for the PSU. Actually, in private sector, they are having some playing field area, and they can manage and accommodate according to situation. But
right.
As a
you have a
sector
process.
undertaking,
We
are undertaking. We have to follow these situations. So one of the reason is this, and other is the GIV issues. Because of that, we have held up our various projects in the Rajasthan. And BCD, one of the issue, because of that, the prices of the models that goes higher side. That various these type of issues we are facing after the COVID.
Okay. So, Mr. Narula, now if you can respond to whichever ones you want to respond to, points raised.
Yeah, I think I'll respond to Mr. Peeyush's point of view. Interestingly, yes, the prices have started to ease up now, especially in the last 2 months or so. and primarily it is due to the softening of the polysilicon prices. Erstwhile, polysilicon industry has been a kind of a, closely controlled industry and quite monopolistic in nature. But because of the expansion and because of the demand from, various countries, especially European countries now, so they have started to, ease out their production capacities and gone right on their targets of expansions, which is giving, a good flow of polysilicon capacity to wafer and cell suppliers. So the point here is that the kind of investment which is required to 1 gigawatt of module manufacturing, the investment required for a cell or a wafer is quite high. And because of that, the present nameplate capacity globally is more than 1 terawatt, I would say, more than that. Although we see 400 to 500 gigawatts of manufacturing already established and we are supplying and shipping is happening across the globe, but the actual nameplate capacity is 1 terawatt as of now. So looking at that, there is no dearth of capacity of module assembly globally. Even India is also catching up. That's good news, but globally capacities are quite available. It is only how they ramp up and they add the shifts and add the manpowers to it. Coming to cells and wafers, there is a deficit of cell capacity globally, which is not able to match as well with the module capacities or the expansion plans. So even when the polysilicon prices have softened, the flow will go towards now the cell capacity, and that will create a brief hurdle until the people decide to invest into cell capacities, whether in India or globally, such that the capacities reach to a level of terawatt levels, so that there is a complete back-to-back flow of polysilicon until modules. So until that happens, I would see the fluctuations will keep on happening because of one type of industry or the other. If India or other countries depend upon wafers or cells, then they have to face that music every now and then. So the best way forward is that India should invest into wafer and onwards technologies and make polysilicon as their input material so that they are free from the cell fluctuation and cell capacity turmoils.
Okay, all right, great. Next round, I'm going to just focus on government policy, measures or any measures that they're taking. I'm going to begin with Mr. Mohit this time. Mr. Mohit, what is the government doing right, and what more can it do? And your point of view on the LMM, we always seem to have that question every year now.
Right. I think a lot of things are being done right. A couple of points which are very important for the sector at this point in time. First is our view on the entire BCDE matter. How do we want to sort it out? There are different buckets. One bucket being pre-March 2021, when the order came out, was notified. What happens to projects prior to that? Now, the best way out is to, although government has given extension for commissioning of those projects, but the best way out is grandfather those projects.
Right. So that there is not a there's not a rush for that.
Yes, there's no rush, and then the entire change in law process gets actually eliminated. What happens to projects after that window? Again, there needs to be clarity on how the entire process will be managed, because in the past we have seen that the compensation has taken years.
Right.
And because this time the amount is not small, 40% duty is quite steep. Even 25% on cells is a steep number.
Right.
All developers may not have the wherewithal to be able to manage those cash flow issues till it doesn't come in.
Okay.
One thing that government can do and central government can do is, and it has done in the past, it has mandated the implementation agencies to keep paying, whether the change in law compensation comes from DISCOMs or not, the ultimate off-takers or not. Okay. But again, implementation agencies, their books get burdened because of this.
Right.
So the amount that government collects in the form of duties, if it can pass that on to implementation agencies, their job becomes much simpler and the sector does not face the cash flow stress.
Okay.
That is something that can be done.
Okay. All right.
Then
that's fine. Let's go, because give others a chance. And then, in fact, I should have probably just said one thing you want the government to do. That way everyone gets a chance. So, Mr. Rathour, two things that you would like the government to do. Let me rephrase it. One thing that you're very pleased that government has done, and one thing that you would like the government to do. Sir, the mic closer to you, tilted. Yes.
Government has taken very good initiative like LMM postponement for 1 year. So because of that, most of the EPC contractors, they can participate in the tender of the NHPC, whatever we are plotting. So postponement of the LMM compulsion for the PSUs. And second thing, the waiver of the transmission charges till June 2025.
Mhm.
And some of the few initiatives are already.
Yeah, so what is it that you would now like them to do?
Actually, I need from the government to give the more attention about the infrastructure for the evacuation system.
Okay, so transmission.
That's why, because of that, our projects are delaying
Right.
in the Rajasthan because of various issues.
Right.
And lack of the infrastructure for evacuation
Yeah.
system and various issues of the connectivity.
And of course, you have the Great Indian Bustard issue
Yeah.
there.
So most of the demand from our side is the connectivity and infrastructure of the evacuation system, and to easy make the path for the acquisition of the land. One of the other issues, the land, and that also we need from the government and other state governments.
I should tell you, Mr. Rathour, for the last 25 years, regardless of the sector that we do conferences on, land acquisition has always been there.
Okay.
The good news is that environment clearances used to be right up there, and now they're not as much of a concern. I don't know if that's good news or bad news, but nonetheless.
Other major issue is the now integration of the renewable sources.
Right.
Recently, the one of the issue that has been raised by our government instrumentalities like CA and other regarding the reactive compensation devices.
Right.
That is the additional burden coming on the developers. That is the huge amount. Because of that, our return is going the very lower sides. That's
Right.
why no government PSUs are interested to invest in these business because of that.
Thank you, sir.
So that is the one of the issue for us.
Thank you. Mr. Varghese, one thing you're very happy about, and maybe 1-2 things that you would like them to do.
I think the positives for the industry are one, there is a lot of aggression from the government now, right, in terms of adding capacity. And there's a bid calendar which has been announced. We're talking about 50 gigawatts of bids to come out in the next 1 year. And that's one side. And the second part is regarding the transmission network, right? There seems to be some amount of advanced planning happening now. There's a 180 gigawatt plan which has been worked out. We set up by 2030. There are states which are identified, areas which are identified, and at least 30 to 40 gigawatt of these transmission capacity is already under bidding or in a reasonably advanced stage. So those are the good parts. What the government will have to work on is even if you come out with 50 gigawatts of bids, converting them into PPAs, right? And that's always been a bottleneck in the past. Hopefully they'll work out a solution to get the PPAs done soon after the bids happen. And just adding to what Mohit said, industry has been pushing for grandfathering for last couple of years. Right? And there has been no success. Because the moment the developers push for it, the manufacturers push back because they are seeing it as a loss of business for them. I think the ideal solution right now and what we are trying to push for is waiver of duty on cells. Okay, and makes logical sense because there's no cell capacity in India. It doesn't make any sense to have 25% duty on cells when you can't buy it from anywhere else. I think the government should push for should give waiver until cell capacity comes up in the country. And if that happens, then the cost impact for the developers is also minimal. Basically, it's your incremental cost of manufacturing modules in India versus manufacturing them in China. And so that will hopefully ease things up. That's where I think the industry should now focus on. Yeah.
Okay. I'm actually just going to get a quick comment from Mr. Srivastava, who is the Group CEO of WARI. What does he feel about what Mr. Varghese just said?
Let this session not become...
No, just I'm only going for
collaboration.
160-second intervention. That's all.
More in the spirit of collaboration, I agree. And we in fact have been saying that the there has to be a win-win situation. So why not let manufacturers do the manufacturing based on what Sanjay said?
Right.
So
Okay.
ultimately, it's the cost of the module that matters to the
Right.
developers. Whether you allow, in whatever manner, the duty to be lowered, etc., the project won't be feasible otherwise.
Okay. All right. All right. So let me go to Mr. Narula now. Mr. Narula, what are the things that you're happy the government has done, right? And what would you want them to do? What are your expectations from the government?
Happy, I think in all the regards that, yeah, we are there and we are surviving the market and industry, and we are one of the largest supplier as of now. Like last year, we have shipped around 3 giga to India, and we were the largest supplier of all the major projects in India. So happy about that, and I think it is all because of certain policies of government, as well as the support and confidence of the developers and investors and bankers on our product and technology. So really, really happy and thankful. But the hurdles still remain. The issues which we just talked about, ALMM or BCD, they are quite valid points because more than a hurdle, I think, or more than the issues, whether it could be ALMM or BCD, or in past it was SGD or ADD. What we need to see from government is to give a clarity, give an outlook for a long term. You bring certain hurdles, it's okay. If you are there to balance both the industries, both the sides, it's okay. But you give a clear outlook of say 3 to 5 years so that people can take their calls accordingly. Mm-hmm. It should not be one step forward and 2 steps backwards, which has always been there. So I think we should look into that to take care of it.
Okay. So my next round, I'm going to begin with you, Mr. Narula. And the answers are going to be different for different people. What segments do you feel hold the most potential?
In future now, So I think module manufacturing also is a very good sector to see the potential. But more than that, I think now we are coming into energy storage in a big way. I think there are a lot of tenders which we are seeing floating, and many developers have got a chunk of it already. So as the suppliers and as manufacturers, we have also entered into that segment now, and we have launched our ESS solutions as well. So I think we see that there is a big potential of energy storage in the country, be it on pumped storage or on pure battery storage or any other way, hydrogen, but there's a big potential available. So sorry to say, but India is still lagging behind in terms of manufacturing capacity of solar modules. So this is the best opportunity for people to invest into energy storage right now, so that we can compete with the best countries of the world. And I would like to comment on Mr. Srivastav's point as well here, that it is a time of collaboration rather than of being competitive or pointing fingers. So all stakeholders, all countries should come together, see which country or which stakeholder can contribute what towards the growth of this renewable sector, and take from that and learn from it.
And of course, when you say countries coming together, you're not talking about one country invading another, right?
I'm not having any comments on that. But technology-wise and manufacturing-wise,
one such thing has already done enough damage to the world. We don't want another such thing happening.
Yes.
So, okay. All right. Okay. So let's go to Mr. Rathour now. Mr. Rathour, if you can rank for me from your point of view, when you look at new segments or new areas, and I'm going to ask you to rank from NHPC's point of view, potential when you're looking at pumped storage or green hydrogen, or let's say even round the clock power, which is the biggest business opportunity for you?
As far as NHPC is concerned, pump storage is the prominent area and having good potential. And other is the energy storage, battery energy storage system. So already we have traveled the path in the pump storage, and we have around good capacity that has been allocated by the Ministry of Power to NHPC. And we are working around 3 gigawatt in the MP. And pump storage, and around 4 or 5 projects we are now going to just execute the MOU with the Maharashtra.
Yeah.
So we are having
That's your primary. Okay. I should mention we are going to do a conference on pump storage in June. And I think also your CMD had come in our conference earlier in Hydro and talked a lot about pumped storage as well in January. Mr. Varghese, when you're looking at different segments from a business point of view, whether it is hybrid, round the clock, energy storage, green hydrogen, what from Renew point of view is number one among those, or number one, number two?
I think we are fairly clear that the future is round-the-clock projects, right? High CUF projects. Now, even if it is green hydrogen, right, you need high CUF renewables at the back of it to make it happen at a competitive price. So it is basically now how to deliver the high CUF. Now it could be a combination of wind and solar. It could be a combination of just wind, solar and storage, or solar and storage. So today, the best option to do is wind, solar plus storage. But as storage costs keep coming down, it could be solar plus storage in the future, who knows? Right? So as I said earlier, next 3 years is a combination of wind, solar, storage, but it could change to solar plus storage in the future.
Okay. Mr. Mohit, what is your perspective? And I'm assuming given your portfolio difference, you would have a different perspective and your different vision. Yeah.
From our point of view, I quite tend to agree with Sanjay.
Yeah.
Firm power.
Right, firm.
Is the way forward.
Right.
Whether it is a green hydrogen use case or a C&I use case.
So let me ask you, firm power. Of course, you have wind component, you have solar component. What are you going to add to it?
See,
or do you feel, given the market the way it's developing, you don't need to add anything to it?
We will need to, because especially when we are talking about RTC,
right,
and that to a 15-minute compliance window,
right,
then the kind of patterns, climate patterns that we are seeing, if you look at the past 5 years,
I understood, yeah, right, yeah.
Nothing is matching with the past 100-year history.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so therefore, at a 15-minute compliance window, you will need to have something that stabilizes the power profile.
Right.
And that is where storage comes in.
Okay.
Unfortunately for us, battery-based storage is still expensive.
Right.
The cost adder, very simply, the rupees per kilowatt hour that gets added because of battery is about 10 rupees today in India.
Right, right.
Which is expensive for a value-conscious country like ours.
Yeah. Used to be the solar used to be 22 rupees.
Yeah, see the journey that we've covered.
Yes, yeah.
So, hoping that the same journey repeats in battery side, but today pumped storage is a bit cheaper than there. So maybe that will be the first, one to get picked up.
Okay.
But over time, battery will kick in.
We are now going to take. Sorry, please, absolutely.
Just to add quickly, the challenge today is that one, battery is too expensive. Pump storage takes 5 to 6 years to set up. Right. Now, how do you choose between the two? So that's the biggest challenge.
Mm-hmm. So, are you looking at pump storage as well?
Yeah, we are.
You are, right. So I think that's, it seems to me that CNI and pump storage right now are the two big themes, right? All right, let's take some questions from the audience. I still have a few, but I will hold those. And there are rules, which is that it has to be a short question, and I'll select the panelist who's going to answer that question. Okay, we want to make sure there's good distribution there. And so this column here, this narrow column, any questions here or comments? Okay, all right, we'll go to the middle column here. Yes, please. Second row, if you can please, and of course, please do identify yourself as well, please.
My name is Anjana Das. I am in research and consultancy related work. Green hydrogen, there is a magic number for green hydrogen, $1 per kg. EU has set that number for 2030. Even Indian, this National Hydrogen Mission is also talking the same number by 2030, $1 per kg. So if you need to get that number, given green electricity poses about more than 50% share in the production cost, that needs green electricity to be delivered to the electrolyzer at a price 1 cent or even less than that per kilowatt hour. Question to the developer, do you think that is possible to achieve by 2030? Thank you.
Okay. I'm looking for someone to raise their hand since I don't know which one of you is most interested in that. Actually, Mr. Rathour, you are in charge of green hydrogen for NHPC. At some point, there will only be NTPC. So, go ahead.
Actually, we have seen the variation in the tariff of the solar. from 22 rupees to 2 rupees. So I hope so regarding the hydrogen as
Okay.
you are thinking.
That's fine.
So that is
that's-
my
that's-
confidence.
Okay, Mr. Varghese, what is your point of view? You can pass on it if you don't have a point of view, that's fine.
So firm power today from RTC projects is in the range of a 310 kind of number, right? Which is basically then we are talking about a green hydrogen cost of closer to $3 a kg. Do we have a path to get to $1? With a combination of wind and solar looks difficult. It probably will have to be solar and storage. Storage will have to come down substantially for that purpose. And the main thing which can probably get those kind of numbers, which now you're getting close to those numbers in the Middle East. Okay, and the reason you're doing that is not because it's cheaper to execute projects out there, it's just that financing is a lot cheaper. Now, if you're setting up green hydrogen projects purely from an export point of view, and then you're able to get cheap foreign credit for that project, then maybe you can get closer to that number. Otherwise, it's very difficult. Yeah.
Unfortunately, Mr. Mukesh Ambani is not here. He's the one who brought up the $1 figure, I think, several years ago for the first
Just
time.
one more point to Sanjay's point. I think, yes, he's right. Middle East financing is very cheap. In India, if we can do something around banking, then the cost of storage gets almost eliminated. And that's when it may be a practical number for India.
Okay, I guess we'll wait and see what happens, yeah. Okay, let's see. Any other question in the middle column here? Yes, sir, could you get the mic to him, please?
I mean, my question would be...
Sir, do identify yourself.
Okay, my name is Mukesh Agarwal from SBI Capital Markets. It's quite puzzling that in the ALM list, although it's, postponed, but there are no foreign module manufacturers. So what could be the reason for that?
Okay. Mr. Narula, you can take a crack at that. You probably have look at that list every month or every day.
Yeah, so if I could get the question right, I think you are saying that there is no flow of imports of modules in spite of ALM being extended. Am I right?
No, sorry, just to be clear, I mean, there are
nobody's there,
module
yeah.
manufacturers accredited in that list.
Okay. So I'll tell you, when we started off the ALMM application process, we were into the COVID era, and it was not possible for any agency to travel to China or any other part of the world other than India to look at the factories and audit them and give them a certificate. So because of that, initial 2 years have gone into that. But later than that, when more capacities were already available within the country, more Indian manufacturers got into ALMM, and there was a pressure on the government to at least look at the positive side of getting supplies from India. So there was a delay by government to visit China, and I think that delay is still there. I don't see in future also whether government will look into traveling there or maybe appointing a third party to audit those factories if government cannot go themselves. So it is maybe something to do with the intent of the government. I do not have any answer to that, but yes, all the foreign manufacturers have subscribed to LMM. They have applied and they have paid fees, and they are ready to welcome Indian government or their agencies to come to the factories and get us certified.
Thank you.
So it's only what we can see is that once it is extended, there will not be any plan to visit, but around next year, first quarter, we can see some more movement happening.
Okay. Anyone would like to add anything to that? Anyone has more insight? No. I figured you would be the one who would be most concerned about this and would have your various people trying to get that answer, right? Okay. We'll go back. Sorry, you were going to add something, Mr. Varghese, please?
I think we'll see First Solar getting added to the list very soon, right? And they're anyway setting up their factory in Tamil.
Yeah, and as Sujay Ghosh is going to be here in the afternoon. And First Solar is also sponsoring the conference, and that's also a good sign. Worry will do that next year for sure. Right. Okay. Any other comment, question from that middle column there? Okay. We'll come to my left there. Any questions from the left side? Over there. Okay. We'll come back. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, and do stand up so maybe the camera person can catch you there. Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Rupam Gautam from Accenture. So my question to the developers, definitely there has been a lot of push in terms of the value chain to decrease the prices, which is the final price of the electricity. But now looking at the increase in the modules price and other things, plus We have heard 2-3 days back only that Power Ministry is also saying to reduce the PPA tenure to like 10 to 12 years. So do you see this, as a dampening of increment in the renewable part that we foresee that we could achieve? Thank you. Anyone from the developers could, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Mohit, maybe you can take a first crack at that, and Mr. Varghese after that.
See, ultimately, where we are in terms of the module pricing or even in terms of the rates of finance, this will have an upward impact on the price of power. There's no doubt about it. Now the question is, and even the PPA tenor that you mentioned, now the question is for a DISCOM, which is the ultimate off-taker, what are the options that it has? This power at roughly about 2.5 rupees becomes a little more expensive. Is there an option to buy something else cheaper? The answer is no. So whether it is 2.5 or it is 3, it continues to be the cheapest source of power. Where DISCOMs may instead focus, and they are already focusing on that, is instead of paying for the cheapest cost of power, which is quite variable, they may focus on hybrid, which some DISCOMs are already doing, and pay a bit more than that. But I would say that even hybrid power today is cheaper than new build thermal coal. And so therefore, to my mind, it should not have much impact on the demand for renewable energy in the country.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else would like to add?
Yeah, so I'll agree with that, right? So we have seen tariffs now going up in the auctions. That impact is there. But as Mohit said, the offtake should also come through. So capacity addition should not be a problem. What might happen is that some of those projects which got bid out in 2021, right? When we saw the 2 rupee tariff. Now, those projects could be in trouble and some of those projects may not come up. But going forward, capacity addition, we don't see a problem, yeah.
Okay. Okay, any other question from the floor? Before I ask mine? Okay, well, I'll ask mine, and if you want to, then please just raise your hand, and I'll ask the ushers if they can please keep looking out for that. Now, CNI has been sort of a surprise. In the sense, 5-7 years ago, we wouldn't have thought that you would be doing 1 gigawatt deals with the company, right? So what is the next surprise that we are going to see, right? Which is the one segment that probably people are not focused on? So could it be residential? Could it be maybe a different way of looking at things? Even the round the clock wasn't thought about 10-15 years ago, right? These are all, people thought about hybrid, but they weren't thinking round the clock, right? Ancillary markets, the residential market. What could potentially be a big surprise? Mr. Mohit, I'm going to begin with you.
So I think within CNI, people who are able to provide firm power, that is a very fast emerging area. Other than that, I think, today developers are not very bullish on the merchant side because the kind of lending terms that you get, given the variability in merchant pricing, makes it difficult for someone to be able to infuse high levels of equity, and
right.
people are not able to scale up so much on that side. But where I see the demand for electricity heading in India over the next few years, whether you talk about globally, trying to find a supply chain solution beyond China, Government of India's own initiative on Make in India, and the kind of demand firming up that we are seeing, I think soon enough, at least some developers should start taking merchant more seriously. And as I was pointing out earlier, when you map solar profile versus wind profile on the expected merchant tariff rates, time of day wise, wind suits better. So that's where I agree with Sanjay, as he was pointing out earlier. Wind is going to make a comeback, and that comeback should also happen on the back of more merchant capacity.
Right. And despite the fact that you're talking about, government's talking about 8 gigawatt of wind every year now, that's what they're going to try to do.
Yeah, there are challenges on executing
yes.
wind.
Okay, I understand that part. It's 1,200 and 1,500 right now is where we're at, right? Megawatts, so 1.2 to 1.5. Mr. Varghese, what could potentially be a surprise, pleasant surprise?
No, I agree. So merchant is the next segment. I mean, a couple of years ago, banks were not even ready to fund them. But at least now, even if it is at 65-35, we are getting banks who are ready to fund the merchant projects. We are currently about 500 megawatt operation merchant. And we are okay with going up to about 10-12% of our portfolio as merchant. Beyond that gets a little bit risky. So that plus green hydrogen.
Right.
I mean, it's going slow currently, but I think by next 3 years we should see projects start coming up for green hydrogen and a huge amount of renewable capacity getting added to drive green hydrogen. Yeah.
Mr. Rathour, is there something that you feel can happen that people are not focused on right now that could be a big opportunity going forward? It's on, sir, I think.
I think the green hydrogen one of the future energy. So there must be given the attention. But because of the non-availability of domestic electrolyzer, that is costlier. So I think green hydrogen is the one of the best opportunity for the future.
Right.
And second is our both the panelists told about the merchant power. That is the actually government push is also about the seller and buyer to create the power exchange.
Okay.
So actually in India around 90% power is going through the long-term PPA.
Right.
So that government attention to come all the buyer out of that long-term to the short-term business through transaction in the power exchange.
Okay.
As you know, in the Western countries, there is the short-term power transaction through the exchange. There is 10% only the long-term PPA through long-term PPA.
Right.
So that is attention of the government, and as our both panelists is saying, the merchant power is the good opportunity.
Right.
And we are also searching and floated the one tender for the merchant power for sell the solar power in the exchange.
Right.
This is the view of the
Yeah, of course, we can have a full debate about whether we should be 90% spot. I mean, California is a good example of how things can go wrong. So, Mr. Mohit, let me ask you something. So we talk about merchant power. So would you prefer that to a PPA with a company? Mr. Mohit, would developers prefer that to a PPAs with companies?
I mean, the question being, what would be preferred?
I mean, let's say, you're talking about merchant, right? So, but wouldn't a lot of developers just like to have, a 1 gigawatt agreement with Amazon and 300 megawatt agreement with Unilever or et cetera?
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. But the Amazons, the Unilevers, they are more than happy to sign long-term PPAs.
Right, yeah.
So in terms of the merchant, the problem is that you don't have any long-term support.
Okay, let me actually rephrase the question.
Yeah.
If you were a portfolio manager what would you say? Would you say that 30% should be on merchant or?
On the other side, probably it makes sense. But
I'm saying from the seller side, not from the buyer side. Seller side.
Yeah.
Seller side, what would you recommend?
See, seller side, as Sanjay was also pointing out, we would also be comfortable with something like a 10 to 20% mix of merchant in our
okay, 10 to 20%. So that's fair. Yeah, I thought right. Okay, understood. New things that you're saying, Mr. Narula, from any perspective, whether it is technology perspective, anything that you feel people in the hall need to hear about that they haven't heard about.
Yes, so I think the way Indian developers are adopting and Indian manufacturers are adopting new technology, they are not waiting for new technology to be rolled out globally and then they will see and then adopt it. They are going directly to the source and then buying those machineries or technologies nowadays. For instance, Jinko has done now almost 50% conversion of its monoPERC P-type to N-type already, TOPCon. So out of our 70 gigawatt, already 30 to 40 gigawatt is converted to TOPCon, and we are aiming to convert entire 100% by next year. So I am seeing some of the manufacturers, even in India, are already working on that line rather than exhausting their potential of existing capacity or investment. They are taking one step forward and converting their existing lines into an N-type, such that they can be competitive in the market. And I can see that as a very big surprise because without exhausting their full potential of manufacturing, they are committing more investments into the new technologies.
Okay, great. With that, one quick question will allow. That's all.
It's not a question. It's rather only
it's a comment.
An input. Yeah, comment.
60 seconds.
Yes. So I think while we talked about merchant RE and the possibilities that lie ahead, in this space. I basically represent an exchange, which is the third exchange in the country. And I would basically like to suggest that I think going forward, there are big, longer term contracts, which basically you can expect on exchanges as well. And we are pursuing with the regulators in the country and the policymakers. So I think that is something which can probably act as a huge support for generators in particular, to give them the necessary payment security on the other side while entering into such contracts.
Yeah, Mr. Naveen Singh is from